Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So it's very lovely to see so many people gathered here on Saturday evening. This beautiful temple, lovely space, and gathering together to practice Dhamma, listen to Dhamma, a full moon of January, chanting the Anatalakkhana Sutta, which was supposed to have been the second discourse that the Buddha gave after his enlightenment. He gave it in the deer park, Isipatana, near Benares, near Varanasi. This teaching to try to help his disciples, the first 5 ascetics, to try to help them to really understand, penetrate the fact of not self. This is one of the more difficult teachings, I think, for all of us to really understand, because we are so used to thinking of ourselves as a self. And so in this sutta, when we were chanting it, you probably noticed there was quite a lot of repetition. And basically what the Buddha does is to work through each of the different aspects of what we tend to consider me. So the body, the feelings, perceptions, mental formations and consciousness. All these things that we stick together to make a me or a person, a personality. And there are many teachings where the Buddha does this. He uses quite an analytical method, just as a way of challenging the assumptions that we make about ourselves. So with each of them working through 3 different stages, saying, well, how much control do you have over how the body is? Can you stop it from getting sick? Can you make it be the way you want it? And obviously it's clear that we don't have very much control over how our bodies are. And so the Buddha then says, well, when one has so little control over something, is it right that you regard it as yourself? And it's clear that when you look at it in this way, that maybe it's not me. And similarly with feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and sense consciousness. And then in the second section, he's asking. It's like a question and answer. He says to them, well, monks, is the body permanent or impermanent? And clearly we all know that our bodies are impermanent. They're changing all the time, in fact. And having been conceived, born, we've grown up, and at some stage the body will die. And throughout the day and night, it's continuously changing. Getting sleepy, resting, feeling hungry, eating, feeling full, and so on. So the answer to the question, is it permanent or impermanent? Obviously it's impermanent. So then he said, well, is what is impermanent satisfactory or unsatisfactory? And obviously it's not really very satisfactory as a permanent, comfortable abiding. Since it's always changing and it's heading towards old age, sickness and death. Better not to identify with the body. And he goes through a similar process of questioning with, as I said, feelings, perception, mental formations and consciousness. And then the final conclusion that all of these things, every aspect of body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations and consciousness, in all their various different forms, the only conclusion you can come to is that this is not me, this is not mine, this is not myself. And that having recognized this, one then becomes dispassionate, one's less interested, one no longer expects to find lasting peace and happiness in this mortal realm, in this way. And having realized this, then little by little one lets go. So it's a very brilliant, very complete teaching of liberation that the Buddha gives in these relatively short passages. And there are many books written about enlightenment, libraries full of books written about enlightenment, but actually everything that we need to know is in this fairly short sutta that we've just chanted. It takes about 20 minutes to chant it, the whole thing. But of course, having chanted it, we then need to actually contemplate these teachings and apply them to our own experience as human beings. And in a way, this is what this retreat is providing us with, that opportunity, a chance to look very closely, to consider carefully the nature of the mind and body. Because, as I said, we're so used to identifying with it, identifying with the body, identifying with the mind, and all the different states of mind. If we have a meditation where the mind is going all over the place, then we feel a bit discouraged, hopeless. I'll never be any good as a meditator. Long, long way from liberation. And if we have a meditation where the mind becomes relatively calm and peaceful, or maybe even we experience a bit of bliss, then we can get very excited and think, well, I'm almost there. I've practically got it, just about enlightened. And we're very quick to jump to assumptions, to make assumptions about our state, depending on what we've experienced in our meditation. And this is not in any way to dismiss the benefits of having a calm and peaceful mind, but actually I'd quite like to not even dismiss the benefits of being aware of a mind that is somewhat confused and troubled. We might think that that's a bad meditation, but when we're actually practicing, doing the practice of letting go and observing, studying the mind and the body, in the way that the Buddha is encouraging in this particular sutta, we begin to see that whether, however the mind and body are, we can use the awareness of that, we can use the contemplation of that to take our understanding a little bit deeper. As it said in the first section of this sutta, can we really say, may my mind be like this, may my body be like that? Can I really, how much control do I have over these things? And we begin to see, as we sit down and contemplate, we begin to see that actually we don't have so much control as we might have thought. I remember years ago thinking that I chose what I thought, and as soon as I started meditating, I began to see that that was very far from the case most of the time, that thinking just sort of happens, doesn't it? Whether we want it to or not. I must say I was very encouraged the other evening when Ajahn Silo was giving us some pointers for the retreat, and said something like, just a very short phrase, which, I mean, maybe most of you didn't even notice, but it struck me when he said something like, well, if you're going to think, think in positive ways, and try to use thinking in a way that is going to bring benefit. And somehow I heard that in a different way. I mean, I've been listening to teachings for many, many years, but I heard it in a way that was kind of actually giving me permission to think, which maybe wasn't what he intended at all, but I actually stopped worrying so much about the fact that my mind was thinking a lot of the time when I was meditating. And so I think at the start of any retreat, this is what happens, that the mind thinks a lot. There's a kind of momentum, a kind of energy that we carry with us, particularly if we've been quite busy getting ready for the retreat or engaging with a lot of people. There'll have been a lot of talking and a lot of planning and thinking, and when we sit down to meditate, it doesn't just all stop. So I was actually really very glad to hear Ajahn Silo say this, and I thought, okay, well I can relax. It doesn't matter that there's thinking happening. And then I remembered the teaching about the cows that I talk about a lot, where the Buddha talks about the two kinds of thought, and the wholesome kind of thinking, thinking of thoughts that are involved with kindness, compassion, generosity, positive, wholesome things, and realizing that in our practice we can just recognize that thinking is happening. We don't have to be too harsh in our approach to the mind, in our approach to meditation. We use the mindfulness of the breathing, mindfulness of the body, relaxing the body, awareness of the breath as ways to help the mind to settle. But we don't have to just sit on any thought and try to make the mind go completely quiet. It's much more about making peace with the mind and the body as they are. A practice of allowing, enabling, a gradual settling. There are thoughts that we do need to be more careful about. So the second kind of thought, which is the thoughts of meanness, thoughts of ill will, cruelty, aversion, negativity, and recognizing those, then it can be helpful to find ways to replace those thoughts with something more wholesome. That's a good thing to do. I notice myself, sometimes I don't want to do that. Sometimes I want to be grumpy and mean and hurt somebody. That happens, even though I'm a nun and committed to harmlessness. Sometimes I want to cause harm to others, and I can dwell in thoughts of negativity and meanness, but that's not very skillful. It doesn't bring a very happy result. So if these are the kind of thoughts that are coming into the mind, then I would recommend doing something about it, if you can, replacing it with something kinder, more positive, more wholesome, for our own welfare as much as for anybody else's. So when we contemplate the teachings in this sutta and begin to have an appreciation of our relationship with the mind and body, that these are not phenomena, not things to be identified with, although, of course, we live with the mind and body. There's no doubt that there is a very particular relationship that each of us has with the mind and body. So we can consider ways of supporting well-being. I was interested in another thing that was said today. Somebody was sharing an observation about the way that we can destroy our sense of well-being, or our sense of being blessed, our sense of contentment and gratitude for all the blessings that we have in our lives, just by holding a thought of that it's not enough. And those of you who've been around for some time will have heard Lumpur talking a lot about the importance of contentment and gratitude. And sometimes we can get a bit fed up of hearing the same thing over and over again. You've got to be content, you've got to be grateful. And you can think, I'm fed up with that. I'm not. I don't feel content. I'm not grateful. Why do I have to feel these things? But when we look a little bit deeper into our hearts and look at the effect of dwelling always on what's lacking, on what's not okay, you feel it actually makes you feel a bit miserable. It's not a particularly pleasant state to be always noticing the things that aren't all right. I mean, we've all been brought up to be very critical. This is something that is part of the way that most of us have been trained, is to find fault with things. And certainly in community there are plenty of things that we can complain about, things that aren't right, things that we don't like. There's plenty. And when we, for those of us who are staying here for the retreat, we're following quite an exacting discipline right now. The group practice time it's not a picnic. We have to get up very early in the morning, come to the temple, sit meditation for many hours during the day, and into the evening. And it's cold, and there's ice. We have to be careful of the ice, that we don't slip and fall and hurt ourselves. And, we can't always get what we want. When you're a bit tired, you can be a bit grumpy. I've been very grumpy, as some of you probably noticed. And so there's no doubt that just the pressure of living according to a discipline, living a life of renunciation, these things can bring up feelings of negativity. And we can find ourselves sort of inwardly complaining about things that we don't like and that aren't going the way that we would want them to. And I'm grateful that I've lived in this community for a great many years and had lots of things not be the way that I want them to be. And I can notice my mind complaining, but having seen the result of that, I'm perhaps a little bit quicker than some of you might be, who haven't had so much experience. I'm a little bit quicker at seeing, actually, I don't want to go there. This doesn't bring a sense of well-being and happiness to get into believing in and following the complaining mind. So I might have a bit of a grumble, but then I put it to one side. Really focusing on the blessings of this life. I was in London just a few days ago, and noticing people on a really cold night just sitting out on the pavement. These people who don't have proper places to live, and just thinking, well, look what we've got here. Okay, it's a bit chilly outside, but we've got enough clothes to wear. We have places to rest. We have this incredible temple where we can come and sit meditation. And okay, maybe the person beside us shuffles around a little bit, or maybe they breathe in the wrong way. Or that person coughs or blows their nose. We can notice things to complain about. And this is normal, as I said. It's the way we've been programmed. But what I'd like to encourage is to kind of reprogram the mind in a way that rather than noticing and complaining all the time, actually notices all of the blessings that we have. We might grumble and complain about each other. This person is like this, that person is like that. I don't like the way she does this. I wish he didn't do that all the time. But also just the fact of living in a community of people who are committed to the practice of liberation, who are committed to harmlessness, to cultivating a heart of compassion, to cultivating mindfulness. And here it's free. A lot of people I know are doing courses in mindfulness training, and I bet they're paying a lot of money for it. But here, you can come and you can practice mindfulness for free. And the fact that during this retreat time we have a large number of people, who've come from different parts of the world, in order to support us in our practice of liberation, who want us to take this time, and who've come to take care of the kitchen, take care of making sure that if we need to go somewhere that things can be arranged so we can get a ride to where we need to go, and just supporting us and helping us to keep this place beautiful as a place for practice, and sense of gladness that they can share in this time that we have, that people can come and derive benefit from this place, from this atmosphere of calm. So it's really not a small thing, something to really celebrate. So just contemplating this sense of blessing, when we do this, it's a way of just lifting up the heart, bringing a sense of lightness and joy into the heart. And when you notice a kind of grumble or a complaint, then try to quickly replace that with a thought of celebration and joy. Finding ways to lift the heart up and to celebrate. A few days ago I was listening on the radio to somebody, an opera singer he was, and he was talking about the some of the qualities that you need to be a good opera singer, and I was curious about this. And one of the qualities, he said, was imagination. And the person interviewing him sort of said, well, why is that important? And he said, well, because you have to be able to convey to people in a language that maybe they don't understand, to be able to convey ideas, or like if you're in an opera, you're kind of like telling a story, making it come alive. And I was thinking about this in relation to the chanting that we do. And, for those of you who are just spending a short time in the monastery, probably you have to concentrate quite hard on the chanting to be able to do it. Look at the book, read the words, and really pay attention to it. But those of you who've been in the community for many, many years, certainly if you're anything like me, you can probably get through the whole chanting without even realizing that you're doing it. Because the mind can just drift and wander and not really pay attention. And I was very interested just in the idea of using the imagination to actually help the chanting come to life. And when we pay respects to the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, when we chant Namo Tassa, Namo Tassa is the most amazing thing to chant. Homage to the blessed. And I don't always do it, but very often when I do it, I try to just imagine the Buddha in just this incredible being, and there's a Buddha image here, but also just to imagine a human being. An enlightened human being who travelled around in northern India, walking everywhere, and he would sit down and give his teaching, and what that must have been like, listening to the Buddha, sharing his understanding. And I think if there are ways that we can bring it to life that would really, make us feel very, well, for me it brings a sense of real gladness and joy and a kind of richness into the life. And I realize that for so many years I just do the chanting without even really thinking about it, and perhaps there are ways of doing it that can bring much more benefit and blessing. The Buddha himself and his teachings, contemplating the Dhamma. And like the Sangha, one of the things I like to do with the Sangha is just imagine, all these men and women. I'm really because I somehow or other I'd always thought of the Sangha as men, but I realised actually I need to make an effort just to include the nuns as well, because there were bhikkhunis, there were plenty of them, and just to kind of have an image of enlightened women and enlightened men. People who'd been close to the Buddha, who'd realized, had won through to liberation through putting these teachings into practice, and then taught, shared their understanding, right up to the present day. And to, just consider that we're part of an enormous assembly of men and women, throughout the world at this time. Those of you who've been on pilgrimage will have a sense of this. Going to the Buddhist holy places, you see these monks and nuns and lay people, gathering from different parts of the world. And they all have slightly different ways of doing it, different accents, different robes they wear, and slightly different ceremonies. And they often all do it all at the same time, so it can be rather chaotic. But just this enormous gathering of people celebrating the Buddha and his life. And this is something else that we can do that can bring a sense of gladness and happiness into our lives, into our practice. Bring a sort of a real feeling of meaning and a feeling of belonging to something that is... so it's not just me and my practice, or even just this community, with all its kind of issues and troubles and problems about this and that. But to realize there are lots and lots of communities all over the world of monks and nuns, all with their own kind of issues and difficulties and joys and sorrows and likes and dislikes, and to see that this is all, we can all of them, hopefully, receiving the encouragement to use these things for liberation. We might think, well, there are all these communities all over the world. Maybe I can go and find a better one. Maybe I'll go and find one that's really perfect. And one of the things that Ajahn Chah used to say, he said, well, try, but I guarantee there's no perfect community, there's no perfect teacher. But there are good enough communities, good enough teachers and teachings, and perhaps we can see that this community is good enough to see, to understand anicca, dukkha, anatta, to understand the Four Noble Truths, that life in this human realm is fraught with difficulty. There's no way you're going to find perfection in this human realm. And even if you find it for a moment, even if during this time of retreat you have, a moment of the most exquisite bliss and insight. I mean, I hope you do, because they're very nice when they come, but they don't last. It changes. So finding liberation in the midst of the changing conditions of our existence. Learning how to let go of the desire for things to be otherwise. So if it's wonderful, we can enjoy that. We can celebrate that. That's great. And if it's not so wonderful, if it's difficult, if we're having a difficult time, if we're not getting what we want, can we let go of the desire for things to be otherwise? Can we find a place of stillness, a place of quiet, a place of peace, even when things just aren't the way we want? Can we establish a moment of perfect presence with things as they are? A moment of liberation. So this is what we're doing during this time of retreat. We're cultivating perfect presence with every moment. So in a way, this snow and ice they're very good conditions, because you have to be perfectly present. If you lose mindfulness when you're walking around, you could step on a bit of ice and slip. Break your arm, break your ankle, knock yourself out, do yourself some damage. So when with these weather conditions, actually it's very good. So you have to be present, and even if you're feeling upset and frustrated, if you allow that moment of frustration, irritation to pull you away from presence, then that's when you'll fall. And I was saying to the support group when I was in Anagarika, the moments that I cut myself or burnt myself, they were always moments I was having a mean thought about somebody or feeling irritated about something. When I lost mindfulness, that's when we can come to harm. And I remember when I was in the first 5 years as a Siladhara, we have these ceramic bowls for the first 5 years, and every time I used to wash my bowl, I used to, contemplate, I need to be very careful at this moment because the bowl can slip very easily. If I lose mindfulness, I've dropped it, I've broken it, I've lost it. And so it was a very good training for me to be perfectly present and to attend to what I was doing, just as the ice is a very good conditions for us to practice mindfulness. Even if things are all wrong, even if we're cold and we're fed up and we're tired and we're grumpy, just to take care, moment by moment, as we walk around. So liberation is not about having everything the way we want it. The final section of this sutta where it says that the noble disciple, having really seen that there's no self and that there's no satisfaction in the world of conditions, becomes dispassionate. Is perfectly present, but is not always trying to rearrange things the way that they want them to be. No longer grasping on to try to get rid of the things that they don't like. No longer reacting, but just aware. Okay, this is how it is right now. Right now it's like this. And it might be a pleasant like this, or it may be a very unpleasant like this. But right now I can be aware of this. I can find a place of peaceful acceptance and well-being in this moment, just the way it is. So of course we always want things to be the way that we want them to be. This is normal. I do anyway. I always want things to be how I want them to be. I want to get what I want. I don't want to be with things when they're not the way I want them to be. But I can be mindful. I can be present. Even when I'm feeling really fed up and grumpy and irritable, I can stay present with that. I don't always manage it, but I can. And each one of us has the capacity to stay present. So my encouragement for us all this evening is to see, is to cultivate this quality of presence, to take refuge in mindfulness in this moment. And although we may have a preference for things to be otherwise, to see if we can experiment with relinquishing that desire. Just allow things to be the way they are. Using a mantra, say, this is how it is right now. Rather than believing in the incredibly reasonable monologue that goes on about how things should be. We can listen to it, but we can also establish mindfulness and presence and a sense of gratitude, contentment and celebration for our own well-being and for the well-being of everybody. So I'd like to offer these thoughts for your contemplation this evening.